Hi, my name's Alistair Greig from Fastman. Let's talk Permissions Manager. This is the first of 3 videos we're doing showing you the functionality and features of our Permissions Manager product. The first video will be focusing on being able to see and understand permissions in your OpenText Content Suite or Extended ECM system. The second video will be focusing on the ability to act on those permissions, so make changes, replace, copy, rollback, this sort of thing. And the third video will be focusing on the more advanced features of Permissions Manager, such as templates, virtual permissions, and the integration with web reports and so on. And we'll also in that video be covering the admin functions, so how you can set up Permissions Manager to suit your local business requirements, giving individual users access to specific functions and that sort of thing. So without any further ado, let's move along. So as you can see, we are in a Content Suite 22.2 or Extended ECM 22.2 system. We're in the Smart View, and I'm in a folder called Fastman Permissions Manager, which is our demonstration folder, and it's fairly straightforward. So what I'll do is I'll run you through the features that are available through the Smart View, which is typically what a user or a business user would use if they are in fact using the Smart View. And then I'll switch over to the Classic View and I'll show you the same things in the Classic View, and also some of the more advanced viewing and query sort of searching functions that we've got available from that view. So let's start. Just to set a baseline, let's have a look quickly at what you get out of the box. You can get out of the box, if you do not have Fastman Permissions Manager, you can see the permissions on an individual item, and you can see the permissions that each of the groups or ACL or users, have got via their ACL entries or one of their sort of default owner or owner group settings, and you can drill into those, and it gives you a little bit more information if you want. You can also access the Permissions Explorer function, which again is very similar. It does the same sort of thing. It gives you a little bit more functionality. It gives you the ability to be able to see the groups and also more than one group at a time. It doesn't give you a lot more than that, and it does give you the ability to be able to filter on the groups that you can see on the screen and so on. But it's very click, click, click again, just like the standard functionality is. So let's go back to the main screen, and let's get back into Permissions Manager by comparison. So Permissions Manager is accessed in exactly the same way. You can get to it via the function menu on an item. You get a dashboard which shows you straight away all of the access that's available, also provided through the normal ACL entries and so on for an item. You also get the ability to be able to drill down and expand on the children of those items. So as far as that structure goes, you can keep drilling down and it'll keep on displaying dynamically the permissions that are available for those items. You can still click on each of the entries and get the same level of information we saw a minute ago. So that's all available, no change there. But it's all done in a much more structured, much more organized way. It does little things for you too. For example, it's got the color coding on the right hand side for the the read and the write and the admin flags. It's got the ability to be able to show security clearance, which is a really nice little feature, supplemental markings or both. That's really tidy. As you can see, it's very dynamic and it does it on the fly. It's also got the ability to be able to filter. So if I type in a person's name, for example, my own name, it will come up and give me a list of the relevant usernames. In fact, if you go back here and type in Fastman, you can see that it actually picks up all of the Fastman people in the system as well, because we have Fastman in our email addresses which are assigned. So if I click on my own here, it'll filter it, and I can choose to filter that on the top row as well. And you can see all of a sudden that it's showing me the access that particular user has, regardless of whether that user is actually included in the standard, the ACL entries that are available that are provided against each of the items. So you can see here, for example, that in the corporate services folder, I actually have access being provided to my own user ID. And through an entry which is against my name, but I also have effective access through group memberships. So effective permissions is different to explicit permissions. Effective permissions means the access is provided via your group membership, and the explicit permissions means it's provided directly. So you have an entry for your user account or that person's user account on an item. I can expand and collapse that just like I could when I was browsing. You can see that this is a business workspace. So again, it's doing the same thing as expanding and collapsing. If I click on this little entry here, it will pop up and give me a screen which tells me how that access is actually granted. What's the membership of the groups or the roles that are being applied to that item, which give this user, this particular user, effective access. And as you can see, it's accrual. So we have public access gives me CC contents, Fastman staff gives me CC contents. So as a result, my total permissions is CC contents. If I close that down and let's choose one that's got a little bit more access, like the workspace itself, let's go into that. And you can see that the Fastman staff gives me C and C content, so read access, but because I'm a member of the business administrator group, I actually get the ability to edit permissions on that item, and my effective permissions, my total permissions is edit permissions, if that makes sense. If you've got a question about any of these things, just put a question into the chat, and we'll get back to you after the session. Yeah, that's the best way of getting some feedback on questions. You can click on this again and drill down. So it's really interesting to see how that works. But effectively, that's what you see, effective permissions. And it's really quite straightforward and quite simple to use. Now, 9 times out of 10, that's enough for a lot of users. If they just want to see what permissions have been granted and what have been provided, that's often enough for a lot of users. However, let's assume you want to do a bit more than that. Let's assume that you want to be able to search on specific permissions. Let's assume, for example, you want to see what group someone is a member of, a particular user is a member of compared with another group that another user, because maybe one user's got access that another person doesn't have, for example. We have an advanced function button over on the right hand side. Now when you click on that, you actually get you're taken back to the classic view, but you're in context. So we talk about in context when we are dealing with Permissions Manager, and that's got two meanings. The first meaning is we're in context. In that situation, we jump between the Smart View and the classic view, so you don't have to move around and navigate, and you're still in the Permissions Manager product. The other thing is we're in context of Content Suite or Extended ECM itself. So if you're using Extended ECM and you're inside the Extended ECM user interface, we do everything in context of that. So you don't need to leave it, go to another application, extract information, run queries, apply them, and wait for an API to run, this sort of stuff. All our interface is done in context with Permissions Manager, is done in context of the Content Suite Extended ECM user interface, and that's got some real advantages. It means, for example, when you're in this advanced classic view, you can go in here and you can use all the function menus. So you're still able to do exactly what you would otherwise do from Permissions Manager as if you were in the main sort of browse view for that location. You can also go backwards and forwards. So when we click on the button here, you'll see that I can go backwards and forwards between various windows and screens just as I would in a normal browser. I don't have to jump between applications. So that really does save a lot of time. It also means you don't have to make a lot of notes, because you're doing things in context, we're doing things real time. You don't need to make notes about what you're seeing, what you're doing. You can go backwards and forwards and see all this as you go. But let's get back to the basic use case that we're talking about. So just like the Smart View, you're able to go in here and expand and collapse. Now the screen's not bringing it up in a really high level of contrast here, but there are different colors being shown for the corporate services folder versus the Fastman permissions folder. And the reason for that is because the permissions on the corporate services folder are different to the Fastman Permissions Manager folder. And that is true of all children below. If, for example, I went down and expanded it, as I'm doing here, you can see that all these folders underneath the corporate services parent are also a different color to the Fastwin Permissions Manager, and that means that they all have different permissions to that parent, the Fastwin Permissions Manager. Now, the other thing about context is the Permissions Manager runs in context of the location in the system that you are operating from. So pretty much any type of container that you've got in your organization or in your system, you can run Permissions Manager from. And let me show you what I mean by that. You can run Permissions Manager here on a standard old-fashioned folder, classic folder. You can go down to customers, for example, here, and you'll see there are workspaces in here. And if I expand those workspaces, you can see that they've got a combination of folders and so on. Just this one, just folders, email folder. You can click on that, and you can run Permissions Manager from there. So if you want to just work within one of the workspaces, for example, you can do that. You can also see when I bring this up that it shows you the roles that have been assigned as well. We'll cover off roles in one of the later videos, but we fully support roles. We provide you with a number of tools and functions that allow you to be able to manage your roles inside Content Suite very effectively, inside your extended ECM, I should say, really typically, and I'll explain a bit more about that in the next video. So anyway, based on what I'm saying is you can go to a container, and again, as I said before, I can simply go back and it'll take me back to where I was, into the parent Permissions Manager folder with all those different settings and views that I had in place. I can also, just like I could in the Smart View, click on the group. Now in this case, it also tells me the number of members of that group. So I've got 20 members in that General Manager group, and it's got a nested situation. So we've got other groups nested beneath it. So we can see all that, and that's coming from the standard permission structure inside Content Suite. We still give you access. Now when you're doing this, you should be aware that you still have access to the standard functionality. So if I wanted to edit the group, I could. It'll open up, in that case, open up a new window. But you can do all that, and it's really quick and clean, and works very effectively. Okay, moving along, let's have a look. We can do the same filtering. Let's pick on another user. So we've got a user called Sam Crocker. So we've got Sam Crocker. We can do the same filtering as we did in the Smart View. We can do it in the Classic View. So there is functional equivalency between the two as far as the viewing side of things is concerned, and the understanding aspect of Permissions Manager and permissions in your system. You know, it's funny when we're dealing with this product, the three high-level use cases that we generally deal with, everything comes down to the three high-level use cases. The first one is I want to see what's in place. That's the first video we're doing. The second one is I want to be able to make changes. I want to do things. That's the second video. And the third one is I want to manage. So we've wrapped the third video up with the more advanced features as well. But you can see a lot of that going on as I walk you through this. So in this case, we don't get a chance to be able to expand and collapse the top row. That's a Smart View only feature. However, we get the same level of information in our display as our results. We get the same information that Sam Crocker has got through his own explicit entry, ACL entry against the corporate services folder. He has got CNC contents, but as effective permissions is in fact the ability to be able to delete that folder, which is a little extreme for a user. And so we can go down and have a look at that. I'm just moving that around a little bit so it's easy to see. You can see that that's actually coming from this group that's assigned to that item. And if we click on the more detail, you can actually see, if I'll expand that a little bit for you, you can see that in this case, that records managers group, the structure of it is such that it's got the document controller group below it as part of its membership list. And inside the document controller list, we've also got this mnor.control, Norway standing for, and S. Crocker, Sam Crocker, is actually a member of both the document controller group and this Norway.control group. So by that, he gets access through two paths to be able to delete these items. So this gives you a really good view of what you need to make changes to if you want to remove access to that that user and other users like him, essentially take them out of those groups. And I'll show you a bit more about that in a minute. That's really good and really useful. So you get a lot of information here. You can, if you want, come in here and change it to another user if you wanted to. So it's very easy to see, very easy to use, the whole point of it is that you don't have to move away. Well, not the whole point, but a big point of it is you don't have to move away from the standard the screen that you're working on, or Content Suite itself. Now, just as an interesting side point, if I just deselect that Show Effective Permissions screen button there and apply it, I can just for a quick comparison, I can get in here and see what access this user has got on individual items below it. So in this case, you can see that putting aside group membership, this is the reason I'm showing you this is really what you see when you go into individual items. If I go into the workspace collection, which is a collection sitting in the customers folder, you'll see that Sam Crocker has got CNC Contents access to it, but you won't see much more than that. You won't know that he's actually got effective permissions to be able to delete the folder, which is a bit of a problem, I think, from most organizations. So you're really only seeing half the story. So I can go back here again, leave that button selected, and go in here again and see these. And well, in fact, in the workspace collection itself, he's got the same level of access, so that's not providing any more access. But if I go down to the Fastman Pty Limited, you can see that, in fact, on that particular workspace, Sam has got the ability to delete everything. I don't know why, where it came from, but he has. Now, that's all good and proper and very useful. It's still not really giving you the 100% picture though. You can go in here, and if I just clear that, you can see that there is a little button on the top right hand corner here, which I think a lot of users, more advanced users, are familiar with, but it's really handy, and it gives you the ability to be able to do more granular searches inside your system. Now, there is no permission search function there's no permission search function in Content Suite Extended ECM without Fastman Permissions Manager. And the reason it's valuable is because then you can start to search on types of access that a person has to objects. Remembering that permissions is the sort of the first of the three main permissions sort of access control features. So you've got your permissions, which is what access individuals or groups or roles have got against specific items, and then you've got the access itself, which is the what functions can people execute against all of the items, regardless of where they are or what they are. So that's really important. So here we go, drill down a little bit more, and we're going to touch on Sam. Same thing, type ahead. We got sick of having to use the picker. You don't have to use the picker. You can if you want to, but you don't need to. So I'm going to go through and show me actually let's just start with any. So we'll start with that really simple one that we just showed a minute ago. I'm not going to pull in group memberships, just going to use the standard ACL entries, or what we call the explicit ACL entries for Sam. I'm going to search it, and it'll go away and do a search against this this part of the structure of the taxonomy. It's part of the system. And as you can see, as expected, we get Sam Crocker, who has got the ability to see and see contents on a lot of these items, but we no longer have a tree view here. Now we're seeing each individual items. And you might have noticed on the previous screen that there's a button that you can choose at the bottom, and you can choose the types of items. So for example, if I just want to see what folders Sam's got access to, I can do that. So all this is out of the box. This is all standard Permissions Manager. If you haven't had access or played with this before, please do. It's really a lot of the value of the product comes from being able to do these things. And so therefore you can see I've taken out all of the documents and all the workspaces. I'm just focusing on the folders, which is kind of useful. The little refine search button up here, really handy. Scroll down, let's take our all types back in again, and let's just start rolling in the group memberships. So now we want to do effective permissions, and we want to bring in the group memberships that Sam is either a member of, or a group that he's a member of is a member of. We've got a hierarchy in there. So we search, it goes away. Now this is the only place in the whole product that we actually query the database directly. So just so you know, it's a point it's a question we often get. Do we hit the database? And we only ever query the database directly once, and that's through the search function. So you can see here that I've pulled in the group memberships. Actually, what did I do? I've pulled in the group memberships, but I'm still looking for any access. So I can search. I'll just search that again. It doesn't take very long. Now, sometimes if you've got a very large structure, millions of items, then I'll show you on the third video how you can control what users can do. So they can't do a query against 2 million items. They can only do a query that returns maybe 50,000 or 100,000, things like that. So we have a lot of controls on the back end that give the administrator the ability to be able to manage what can be done with Permissions Manager. So so you can see now I've pulled in the group memberships, and there's a lot more access, but it does still list the items. Where there's no access, it just doesn't give you the ticks, the flags. But where it is giving you the flags, you've got some access which you didn't have. So in this case, on this particular folder, Sam Crocker's got read CNC contents through his own user ID being assigned, but he has got effective access through being a member of this records management group we talked about a minute ago before. So you can see that's really handy from a search function. Now, the best thing what happens then is, say someone comes along and says, I really don't mind when people have got CC contents. I just want to be able to see where they've got at least, for example, what can he delete? What documents can Sam, or folders, let's say, which documents can he delete? So I'm jumping around a little bit, but I'm trying to give you a feel for the variety of queries you can do and the range of queries you can run on your permissions using Permissions Manager. So it goes away and runs that query, and it'll come back with a list just focusing on the options that I selected. There it comes. Okay, so documents only, no folders this time. What's he got the ability to be able to delete? And you can see that there's nothing shown here that doesn't have the effective permissions of delete. And in most instances, those permissions are granted or granted to Sam through group membership, not through explicit membership. So not through someone putting Sam Crocker onto those documents, but someone actually making Sam probably a member of a group, and that group's got access. So really, really useful, really powerful, and auditors love this sort of stuff. When you get an auditor comes along and says, show me what access somebody's got, you can do it very quickly, very easily. So I'll just jump back to the standard Permissions Manager view rather than the search, because I don't want to get too far into the action items at this stage. You can see they're on the screen, and I'll talk about those on the next video. What I do want to show you now is I want to show you a couple of other features we've got around permissions viewing, and that is the web reports integration. So you can, if you've got specific reports that you need to run on a regular basis or periodically or for a particular purpose or project, then you can integrate web reports directly with Permissions Manager. We provide you with the ability to do that on the folder that you're operating from, and you see that with a little button on the right hand side. It says run report, and against each item below it, and again run report. So let's just choose this corporate services folder, and if I run report, it gives me a list of all of the reports that have been created and configured for this system against these items. So you can be quite specific about which reports can be run against which types of items and by whom through a number of different methods. Let's just have a look here, for example, at this report. Let me have a look at all of the changes that have been made to permissions for I think since 2022, the start of this calendar year. So if I scroll down, you can see that this report is a standard. It's out of the box. We ship this report with every copy of Permissions Manager. But as an example, it gives you the date, the time and date, the old permissions that applied, the new permissions, who did it, and which group or which user was affected by it. So you can see that that's really useful for record keeping and this report actually comes through from, we use the similar sort of structure when we do our rollback as well, but it's not actually the same reporting, but there's a couple of ways you can get to that. But this is what you will see if you run that report, and you can run the same report from anywhere in the current view that you're in. So if I run the report against the customers folder, same thing, it'll run it against the customers folder, and I can expand it. It's the same sort of easy functionality. If I expand customers and I go down to the workspace, I run a report there. Looks like this report doesn't at this stage include the roles. That's just a configuration thing, but same difference, it's the same thing. And you can see that it is including roles, because it's got account executive, that's a role against this workspace. So that's the integration with web reports, which is a really popular little feature. The other really popular little feature, before we finish up on this first video, first section of this series, is the compare groups function. So now again, this is a feature that's only available through the classic view, but it's a really popular feature. What you can do in here is you can come into this compare groups function and you can type in a person's name. Again, it's type ahead. We don't like to have to use the picker if we can avoid it. And here you can get a list of all of the groups that this particular user is a member of. And you'll see, again, I can click on this and bring it up and navigate. I don't have to go navigating all over the place to do this type of thing. But you can also see that there are little checkboxes next to it. So let's say somebody is, this is getting into sort of video too, but let's say, for example, that somebody is leaving the organization, and what you want to do is they've got a combination of groups that have been assigned through Active Directory and groups that have been assigned within Content Suite Extended ECM itself. You can go here and just select either all or some of those groups and just click on the leave button at the bottom, and it will take those group memberships off that person at that point. And now that's really handy, and a lot of customers find that really useful. And then one of the things they really like is that if you want to compare that with another user, I can come in here and I'll take my own user account, which we've been using before, and I can bring up in the second half of the screen the same information for the second user, and visually you can very quickly see the differences between them, and in fact you can actually see them even more clearly, because the ones that are the same don't have a checkbox next to them, but the ones that are different have a checkbox. So when we come in here and say, well, okay, look for corporate services on the left hand side, not there, and look for document controllers on the right hand side, not there. So you can see that my user account, my own personal user account on this system, its home group is the MHS users, same as Sam Crocker, and I'm a member of Fastman staff, same as Sam Crocker. But these three items below it are unique to each individual users. So let's say you're onboarding somebody and you want to make them the same as someone else. Perhaps they're going through, even if they're going through Active Directory and doing things that way, you can easily and very quickly visually see that they are different. And if you wanted to make them the same, you simply click on the button here and go down here and say copy groups. And that would give all the same group memberships to this other user, to Alistair, it's disappeared from the screen, that's okay, as is available to Sam, or assigned to Sam Crocker. So really quick, really easy, really simple. And as you can see, that's a dynamic screen. So if you're just looking at one user, you just get the list of groups. But if you're looking at two users, you get the differences shown really simply. This is a really popular part of our product, of Permissions Manager, which is a good place to finish this first video and to do a little preview on what's coming up in video number 2. So today we covered off the basic features of being able to see and understand permissions that are in place in your Content Suite or Extended ECM system. In video 2, we'll be looking in more detail at the ACT functions, and these are the functions that allow you to be able to change, to copy, replace both permissions on an item or a group of items, also to remove or replace a user across either a group of items in one location or inside a collection. We'll get into the collections in a little bit more detail. We'll also look at the rollback function, which is a very popular part of Permissions Manager. And then don't forget, in the third of these videos, we'll be looking at the more advanced features like templates and role-based access, and also the administration functions. But in the meantime, thank you very much for watching this video, and if you do have any questions, don't forget to put them in the chat or send an email to info@fastman.com. Thank you very much.